Hello Year 11. This is take 2, seeing as Mr White's just learned how to use the camera.
Sorry.
We're going to look at section B of the Human Geography paper, which is the paper 2. Hopefully by now you've watched Mr White's video about how to answer section A and you're familiar with the questions that you're required to do. I'm going to look at section B, which is a section you have to answer on the exam paper. It's about the changing economic world, where we have studied Nigeria and the UK at length. And then in our next videos, we're going to look at the last question on the paper. It's question 3 about resources, and then finally the water question. Okay. On this paper for the changing economic world, there's a mixture of questions that are skills questions, questions where you have to respond to resources, and there is a 9-mark question as well. In the 9-mark question I have to answer, there's not spelling, punctuation and grammar, but obviously we want to make as good a job of that as possible, make a good impression on the examiner. Right, okay, so changing economic world, 10 questions. We start with a figure, a table, where we have to rank countries from life satisfaction score, so 0 satisfaction score and 10. And the question is asking us to calculate the median value here. So I would literally rank them 1 to 10, and my median one will be my one in the middle. So a median working. It's asking me to show my working, so I put all of my details in the box. I'm getting 1 mark for my workings and 1 mark for the correct answer. Okay. I'm not going to spend the time ranking that now, but that should hopefully be a straightforward maths question.
Quick sums, Mister.
Quick sums. Okay, so well, I'd have to. So I've got to rank them from 0 to. Well, it's not, but I'm only doing median value, which is the one in the middle. So I'd start ranking them. So 5.5 is my first one, and then my second one is 5.8, and so on. And my highest score, so my 10th one, is 8.4. So my median value will be the one in the middle. Okay?
Yeah.
Right, okay, so just one reason why life satisfaction scores vary between countries. So it's asking me then, why do you get a difference? Generally, you're going to find that richer countries have higher satisfaction, and less wealthy countries, or LICs we should say, so we've got HIC for richer, and LICs for poorer, have lower satisfaction. So HIC, high income country, LIC, low income country. And the richer countries, the HICs, generally have higher standards of living. They can buy expensive goods such as electronic products, for example. I'm saying plenty there to get my 1 mark. And then it's asking me to give a disadvantage of using a social measure of development. So this question's all been based on this idea of life satisfaction, but life satisfaction is a measure where you're trying to get from people how happy are you, how satisfied are you with your lifestyle. It's difficult to measure, of course, because people's life satisfaction can vary from different things. I mean, it might not necessarily be to do with the material goods that people have got. It might be to do with their individual level of happiness, and that doesn't necessarily reflect their wealth. People often say that you can go to low-income countries and they're happier and less stressed than we are in HICs.
It's warm.
Because of the climate, perhaps, yeah, because
swim.
of the climate factor, or perhaps life is less complicated, less stressful, and so for that reason they're happier. And you could put a whereas in here. So let's say, so it varies. Varies person to person. So it's difficult. So difficult to measure. Different things. Different things make different people satisfied. And what you could do there, I mean, that's already got his 1 mark, but if you wanted to, you could say a better measure of development would be something such as GNI, okay?
PQLI.
Or PQLI, certainly. What's PQLI, Mr. White?
What was it?
It's People's Quality of Life Index, okay? Or GNI being gross national income. Okay, right, got to remember our terms ourselves. Yeah. Right, okay, so then we're moving on to question 4. Using figure 6, so I've got this figure in your own understanding to explain the link between DTM and countries' level of development. So this is about the demographic transition model. Now, when we've done this in class, what we would have also have seen would have been birth rate and death rate. And if you remember the curves, they start out high birth rate in stage 1 that falls and then becomes very low, and high death rate in stage 1 that falls more quickly and carries on quite low into stage 5. That's just a rough drawing, and of course you get an increase in population because of this. Whereas this one, so if I was doing my population curve, it stays quite low in the beginning, and then it rockets here, and then it kind of levels off. All right. So it's assuming that we've already understood this in the demographic transition model, and this one is asking us to think about income and time. So what is the link? Okay. Now in stage 1 and 2, so if we say 1 to 2, we've got low level of economic development, because it's saying
subsistence agriculture.
Yeah, like exactly. So it's saying rural traditional society.
People in the
so
rainforest.
It's basically farming, and so therefore a low level of
subsistence farmers.
Economic development. Yeah, perfect. So it's explain the link. So the link there is that the country remains in a low level of economic development because they're not making goods for sale and export. Okay. So I'd identify that area of the model, and then here, a bit further along, if we look at over time how countries become richer, we might refer to the urban consumer society, and so we're saying what we'd say probably then. So we're saying stage 5. That's us. That's the UK. That's HICs. So these are predominantly, so mainly urban societies which are well developed. So they're wealthy, well developed, so they produce goods for sale and export nationally and internationally. Okay, and then so if I put export goods, and there's one other thing where we bring in our knowledge of the demographic transition model, and that is where we say that as people get richer, the pattern is that they tend to have less children.
Is it too expensive?
Yeah. And they are, well, it's partly because they're too expensive, partly to do with women having more choice in their lifestyles, putting off childbirth till a later date for careers, university and careers. So there's also less dependence on children as well. So they're not needed to look after people in their old age. Okay, right. Question 2.5. So this one is asking us to use figure 7, 2 challenges faced by the people of the area. So we just need to read through. Before microfinance was available in the area, crops were failing, so that's a challenge, and they were going from crisis to crisis. We carry on reading. The children would have so little to eat that they become extremely malnourished, and there was very high mortality rate. There we go. I've identified it in the first paragraph. There's my 2 challenges for the people in that area. Okay. One way microfinance can help. So microfinance can reduce development gaps. So you allow people to borrow money. Microfinance being giving people small amounts of money on a small scale.
So little loans.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one of the examples of how to reduce, how to make the level of development higher in a poor country, isn't it? That's one example. It's a bit like appropriate technology, microfinance, education, tourism. They're all the different ways, aren't they?
Exactly.
And that's how we taught them. There's a case study of microfinance in India. I don't know if they did that.
Yeah, and we watched a video, didn't we, on the stoves in Kenya as well, and how a company was growing.
Which is appropriate technology and microfinance.
So the idea being that you borrow money to start a business, or you grow a startup business.
So it's like small scale, grassroots, local community projects.
Exactly.
Self-help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, next. 2.7. Outline one way the political or trading relationship of a named LIC or any country with the wider world has changed. So Now I've got choices here. I can do political or trading, and I can do LIC or NEE. LIC being low income country, NEE being newly emerging economy. For this one, I'm choosing to use Nigeria.
Nigeria is a great one for economics, isn't it?
Yeah, Nigeria is perfect because it kind of represents...
So UK or Nigeria?
Yeah.
That's the two you use.
And this is our low income country rather than our newly emerging, because our newly emerging are places like China, Brazil, Russia, India. So we're going to use Nigeria because we've used that as our low income. How's its relationship changed? I'm just going to use it, do like a political thing. So it was part of British Empire, until 1960. Meaning that when it was part of the British Empire, it was governed back through the British and owned by the Crown. So the King or the Queen at the time would have been in charge up until 1960. It became independent in 1960. But it remained a member. It's still a member of the British Commonwealth. So what that means, Commonwealth. What that means is, as a member of the British Commonwealth, it's recognised as equal status with other Commonwealth countries, and it keeps the Queen as its head of state, or the King at the time. Okay, but its political relationship has changed with the wider world because Nigeria is now independent, but it is still part of the British Commonwealth. Okay, right. Okay, using a case study. So we're going to stick with Nigeria, and how can manufacturing encourage economic development? Okay, and this is 6 markers. So I'm just going to make a few points here.
Nigeria again.
Yeah, so we're sticking with Nigeria because we're using our LIC. How can manufacturing industry? So this is the making things.
So jobs is a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Jobs important. And with jobs comes the ability to pay more tax. Okay, so if you employ your population, you can charge them tax, and if you charge tax, you get more revenue increase. So the government's got more money to spend and put back into industry. And if you have got thriving industry, thriving, spell it correctly. If you have got thriving industry, what that does is it has like a multiplier effect, and it creates more investment, more manufacturing, and generally that attracts foreign investment and growth as well. So thriving industry, so it's more growth.
So learn multiplier effect definition, because that comes up all the time. Anything to do with economy and improving and benefits and opportunities, multiplier effect can be chucked in there. I talked about it in my section. Mr. Tyrell's doing exactly the same in his.
Okay.
So learn that definition.
Because what you're basically getting is you're making people wealthier by employing them.
Giving them more skills.
And you're growing, yeah, definitely. And you're growing the economy.
More education.
Growing economy.
It's developing, isn't it?
And if you grow your economy, your market increases as well. So people have got jobs, they've got more money to spend. Not only do they pay multiplier effect, they pay more money in tax, and then with thriving industry comes further growth, because if it's successful, you can export more, business grows, and foreign investment comes with that.
Yeah, foreign investment too.
Market growth. Okay, right. Obviously, I'd need to write that up in paragraphs to explain it for 6 marks.
Like that, would you? Think any more?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Oh, next page. Right. So, right, we've got another resource. 10 towns and cities. So we're on to UK now. So it's asking us cities that have grown. So these are the ones that have grown. These are the ones that have. Hang on, 10 cities with low. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. So these are the ones with the highest growth. These are the ones with the lowest growth. So they are still increasing. So they're still increasing, but not as quickly as these.
Read the figure.
Yeah, there you go. Mr. Tyrell's just showing you how to make a mistake by not reading. So it said straight away, highest and lowest growth. Right. Calculate the mean growth rate. Right, so it wants an average. Okay. So, and it's asking us for the 10 towns and cities with the lowest growth. So there you go. Read the question. 10 towns and cities with the lowest growth. I could have missed it if I hadn't have interpreted that correctly. So those are the ones with the lowest growth, and I've got to add those all up and divide them by the number. Showing my workings, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so add them up and divide them by 10. Yeah, show my working, give my mean growth rate. Okay, so if you, as I said, if you've watched our previous videos, you'll have seen Mr. White telling you, bring a calculator, bring a ruler, bring those items with you. You can't rely on the calculator on your phone because you're not allowed it, but it just shows you the importance there. Right, 9-mark question. How one or more strategies might reduce regional differences in the UK. Right, one or more. Well, I think I'm probably going to rely on more than one to reduce regional differences in the UK. Now, firstly, it'd be good if we outline where the regional differences are. So we've got a North-South divide in the UK. You should have learned that. Hopefully you've revised that.
What's the North-South divide?
So the North-South divide is the South is far wealthier than the north of the country.
Why was that?
And a lot of it, the reason being, is that the north has experienced a lot of industrial decline, whereas the south has continued to grow mainly through the growth of the service sector.
Why did it decline, the north then?
So what happened was it's an issue with globalisation, and basically other countries were making goods cheaper than us.
So like the
textiles, steel.
The industrial heartlands like Sheffield, Birmingham and the north, they had loads, and South Wales had loads of iron ore and coal in the ground. They manufactured lots of steel, and so the industries are massive in those parts of the country, which is the north. Then, however, other countries like India, Australia, America, Japan started to make those products cheaper. So consequently, lots of the factories closed in those industrial heartlands of the north, and they suffered what was called deindustrialisation because all the industry went out. And so those areas are still in decline now, whereas the south is a thriving area with lots of new types of industry like high tech and quaternary industries and research and development industries along the M4 corridor, and those areas are growing well. And so the government, what they've had to do was try and get people and companies to go and invest in the north, because there's lots of skilled people in the steel industries and so on, but they haven't got any work up there. And so they've encouraged industries from all around the world to set up in South Wales, in the north, like Sheffield, in places like Manchester, Liverpool, Lancashire, Newcastle, and they have a series of different strategies and schemes. One of the schemes is the Enterprise Zone scheme, and the other one is the NIP, is that right? Another investment scheme where they've encouraged, is it NIP? Need to check that one. Enterprise Zone. Right, so there's Enterprise Zone, and then the other one. What's the other scheme? There's another scheme. It's like a small scale version of that. They've both got the same principle. It's like to attract employment, attract jobs, and they do it through what's called incentives, where they say, come and set up your factory. Like they might talk to Nissan, and they say, come up to Sunderland, set up your factory in Sunderland, where there's very little employment. And what we'll do is we'll give you free broadband for the year. We might make reduced rates, so you pay for your water and electricity, and your tax might reduce that as well. And those incentives will make large multinational companies, transnational corporations like Nissan, Lucky Gold Star, those sort of big companies, LG, yeah, Honda, those sort of companies. There's lots of companies like that have come across, and they've taken advantage of the incentives to set up there, and by doing so local people are employed, and also often the government gives those companies money if they employ local people as well. So those strategies, the enterprise zones, basically it's just a name given to different areas where companies can go and set up there and grow and develop.
That's right, we did it was the Lancashire case study for our enterprise zone.
So the Lancashire EZ.
That's it.
Attract foreign investment.
So really, with that 9 marker, so there's quite a lot to take in there. I think the points Mr. White's outlining with the why the regional differences have occurred are useful, and you need to understand those for a different type of question. When you come back to answering this one, if you focus on the strategies and regional differences that are strategies to reduce regional differences, Mr. White's also outlined, so he said what you can do. So when I'm going for more strategies, I've written down my idea of government investment and financial support with enterprise zones, and if I could give an example, that would really help.
Yeah, learn that.
I've put in the attracting foreign investment. Nissan have come from Japan and they're in Sunderland. We've had science park investment and growth. You would have seen an example from Southampton. And the idea of keeping the science, having science parks. I know that's in the south, but it's also reducing regional differences in terms of it's stopping graduates leaving Southampton and heading to London, heading to the capital. So it keeps investment on the south coast of England.
Also, you have, like, you think about it, like in Cornwall, it's got high unemployment in Cornwall, and they're using the same sort of principles to try and attract industry to places like the middle parts of Cornwall, like Launceston, Poole and Redruth, where they create incentives for companies to set up there as well. And like Kings Hill Industrial Estate, there's probably European Union and government schemes involved with Kings Hill Industrial Estate as well, so encouraging companies to set out in these extremity places, these areas where they're peripheral, they're on the edge of the core of London, which is the main part of the UK. So what it's asking you to do really is to say, yeah, there's poverty in the north with lack of industry, there's poverty in the southwest with a lack of industry, and there's poverty in sort of Wales as well, in the South Wales and northern parts of Wales with a lack of industry, because they're all heavy industrial places, and they're just government is trying to attract investment into those areas away from London a bit, because everything's going to London, because London is like the core of the country, is where the government is, it's nearer to Europe, and so there's lots of investment in the north and that area to try and improve transport links, to improve industry there, employment, jobs, and it raises the quality of life of the people.
So I've just added with my strategies as I'm listening. I've added transport infrastructure. So another way you reduce regional differences is to improve transport infrastructure so that that attracts companies in itself. Like, companies don't want to develop in locations where takes them a long time for their employees to go to and from work, and also places where if they are manufacturing new products, then that they can get raw materials in and get finished products out. So transport infrastructure has been important in reducing regional differences. If you could quote something like HS2,
what's that,
the high-speed rail network that's underway in Britain, and any further examples of motorway building.
And airports as well, like developing airports in the north.
We've got, they're talking about, airport.
Improving the bridge across to Wales, speeds up communications. Time is money in business, isn't it? So it's all those sort of ideas.
And so also within infrastructure, you could say technology investment. So the UK is trying to roll out high-speed broadband across the country. That reduces regional differences as well, because it means that people are not required to move into a big regional city or the capital city, because they can work at any smaller scale place as well. So that's important for keeping people.
And you can talk about the multiplier effect, because if you develop the north with new industries,
and that'd be a good way to add a conclusion.
There's like a knock-on effect. So it's just chucking that word in again. That's always a winner.
Yeah. If you had a conclusion that talked about if you do these things, you get a multiplier effect on business, and it retains people in their heart, whether it's in the north of the country or the south of the country, it retains people in their local towns and cities, and it allows business to thrive without a focus being entirely on London.
Very good.
Okay.